Good afternoon, everybody. This is Stephanie Brown, the suburban shaman of Painted Caves Studio and author of The Modern Totemist, here to bring you the next video in my series on modern totemism. Hopefully it is not too windy out here, but the light is better outside, so I'm going to try it anyway. Alright, so this is finally the video that I have been hinting at, but have yet to do, which is called the 5 Identifying Questions for Totemic Knowledge. So what the heck is that? The 5 identifying questions are what one uses in our tradition of modern totemism to answer the ever important question of what does that mean? And that is to say, when someone discovers that they have a certain totem, or otherwise if they become aware of an animal spirit that's working with them in some other capacity, they want to know what does that mean. Of course, it should be intuitively obvious that there are different influences, different lessons to be found in having one animal as a totem versus another, in having a wolf as a totem versus having a coyote as a totem versus having a dog as a totem, etc., right? But how do you go about understanding that? Well, usually for most people in the metaphysical and neo-pagan type community, the protocol would be to pick up a book of a dictionary of animal meanings, and maybe like Ted Andrews' Animal Speak or something else, or to get on the computer and just look up wolf totem meanings and see what that comes up with. Well, the problem that comes up in most of those contexts is you have to ask the question, well, where does that information come from? You know, when that answer is supplied, where did they get it? And that can be especially troublesome when the answer that's supplied is instinctually weird or otherwise just does not fit with the way they feel their totem animal works, right? And I have come to realize that the crux of the problem with all of those protocol sources that I mentioned is that they are referencing the animal's relationship to a certain culture. They're looking at it through a cultural lens, like ancient or modern mythology surrounding the animal, right? And the problem with that is cultures don't always see an animal clearly. Sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. And the best case, there's a lot of insects out today, I apologize. The best example of that is the meaning implied in wolf. You know, anybody who's seen the way wolf is portrayed in Native American myths as a noble teacher and, you know, helper, versus the way wolf is portrayed in European myths as a villain, can see how different cultural lenses can be. So that brings us to our tradition of modern totemism. Instead of looking at animals through a mythological lens, we prefer to look at it through a natural lens. We want to look at the animal's relationship to nature directly, okay? And so we came up with these 5 identifying questions that you want to ask about an animal, totem or spirit guide or otherwise, that makes itself known to you as a helper spirit, to help you understand what its lesson for you is. Okay, so I don't want to make this video too unbearably long, so I'm going to go through the questions rather briefly. But if you'd like to learn more, if this is something that speaks to you, I do recommend that you go to paintedcavestudio.com where you can purchase the Modern Totemist, and I go into it in a lot more detail, okay? So the first identifying question is, what is the animal's environment? And what this will tell you is your relationship to the world or to the nature or to the natural cycle, based on what that animal's relationship is, okay? Animals that can only live in a very limited environment or only in one area of the environment speak to you having physical needs that are more limited and less adaptable than animals that can live in a wide variety of environments that would show you being extremely adaptable. For example, all types of fishes can only live in the water, but things like otters and frogs can live on both the water and the land. So they have they represent a greater degree of adaptability than the fishes. Another example might be the cheetah versus the leopard, where the cheetah eats basically only one kind of prey and lives in one environment, whereas the leopard can eat almost any kind of prey and is much more widely dispersed, okay? So the second question then is the social status of the animal. Is it a solitary animal or does it live in a group of some kind? And if it lives in a group, you want to ask, how is that group organized? How permanent is that group? What is your totem animal's rank within that group? Does it form mated pair bonds in addition to being part of that group? And does it learn what it needs to know through instinct or through learning by observing other members of the group, okay? And this will speak pretty strongly to whether you are a person who yourself is very solitary, sorry, that wind, or whether you are you're more of an extrovert. And if so, the rules for how an animal society operates, the animal society of the totem we're talking about, will overlap with how you instinctually feel a human group should operate. For example, a horse totem, horses live in herds, right? Have both a dominant male and a dominant female, but each of those animals have different roles within the group. The lead mare provides more instruction for where the herd ought to go, whereas the lead stallion is more concerned with controlling the mares coming and going and keeping predators and rival males away, right? So that would translate into a person who feels that maybe men and women are equal in status and value, but that their roles are different in society, that their gender roles are different. That might be a little different, for example, than a raven totem, who, while they do definitely live in groups in that very complex flock hierarchy and whatnot, let's see, for one thing, the males and females hold the same rank, and let's see, completely derailed my train of thought. They also form a pair bond in addition to their rank in the group, and in some situations I believe it is the case that they hold rank together as a mated pair, so that might translate to a person whose marriage and home life is very central to their identity, that they don't have as much individual personal sense of their own status so much as a marriage or household sense of their status. And that would be different from something like a bear or a python or another type of solitary animal that just goes about by itself and doesn't really have a good instinct to translate to a human life as far as how social grouping should operate. Let's see, that leads pretty directly into the third identifying question, which is the differences in the males and the females. You want to ask, did they have a different appearance? Did they have different behaviors or roles? Is there any kind of pair bonding, and if so, the duration? Who raises and teaches the young? And do the males compete with each other, or do they concentrate their efforts on impressing females directly? This question applies most directly to your concepts of gender and how you view it. Someone with a deer, any type of deer totem, probably feels that even though males and females are of equal value, that gender roles are important, that men are different from women in the same way that stags and does are different from each other. Okay, they have different roles, they have different lives, etc., etc. Same with another animal like walruses. Okay, walrus cows and walrus bulls behave very differently, and they look very different in their size and the tusks and all that, and they have different roles in the herd. But that might be very different from somebody who has, say, a coyote totem. Really, there's relatively little difference between male coyotes and female coyotes, other than the obvious, right? Same with wolves, same with jaguars, right? They maintain, they hunt the same, they fight the same, they hold status in the group the same in the case of wolves. And this might translate more towards somebody who really doesn't see human gender as a necessity, even in the slightest, right? They don't understand it, okay? So the fourth identifying question is size. And we break it down into 3 size categories: large, medium, and small. And the way you discern this is you want to ask, can the animal be overpowered by another to have something taken from it, like territory or food, or etc.? And can it overpower another animal to do the same, to steal resources or territory? And large animals are those that do the overpowering. Medium animals are those that are both overpowered and overpowering, and the small animals are those that are just overpowered. And this translates largely to how you will relate to other people. Large animal totems will impart an attitude of confidence and almost fearlessness, but it also can translate to a bit of vulnerability because they don't expect to be victims. Small animals, on the other hand, tend to be very cautious people. They just sort of expect other people to try to get away with something, perhaps, and they're a little bit on the defensive. Medium animals, their influence as totems leads people to be extremely clever because they understand both sides of the dynamic of being a player and being played, so to say. They see that from both sides and are able to interact smoothly with people of all totem types. Some examples of some large animals: bears, lions, all types of deer like reindeer. Some medium-sized animals might be a coyote or a fox. And some small-sized animals would be like squirrels and most types of turtles and that. Okay, that's not too difficult. And the last question, number 5, is it a predator, is it prey, or is it both? This is another one that translates towards attitude. Predatory animals tend to be very goal and planning goal and planning focused in their thinking. They see something, they devise some sort of strategy to achieve it, and then they go after it. And that strategy depends largely on the hunting strategy of the predatory animal whose spirit is influencing you. Will tell you, you know, if it's a wolf, you're going to track it down, you're going to catch the scent and run it down across the land. So maybe, let's see. Boy, this is really getting to be a problem for me, isn't it? Derailed again. The person would come up with a goal and then a series of methodological steps to achieve that goal, whereas an ambush predator, maybe more like a jaguar, would have the person identify what it is that they want and then maybe wait around for the right circumstances to appear before they pounce on it, right? Prey animals, on the other hand, think a little bit differently. They tend to take their resources, more insects, tend to take their resources for granted a little bit more, but they tend to be trusting of people a little bit less. They tend to be thinking a little bit more on storing up and protecting what they already have, as opposed to going out there and getting as they need be, like a predatory animal would be, okay? And some animals are both, and kind of like with medium-sized animals, that translates to a totem that can teach a person how to be very versatile in their skill set. One thing to keep in mind is that predatory animals often are also scavengers, which means that they're very, as a totem, they're very content to take what is found or available, as opposed to needing to go out there and conquer, you know, that sort of thing. Some examples of some predatory animals might be eagle or gators, whereas some prey animals, and they come in all sizes, might be moose, goats, all sorts of types of birds like cardinals and jays. And then you have animals that are both, like spiders or snakes, right? They get eaten and eat other animals. Okay, so when you have answered all of these questions for a potential totem or other spirit helper animal, I hope that you will find its relationship to nature a little bit more straightforward and a little bit more spiritually enlightening and educational for you than the meaning that comes from a cultural source that half the time you can't even identify. You know, all right, is this, if you Google what does a wolf totem mean, the website may be covered in feathers and medicine wheels, but you don't know, is that some Native American tribe's tradition? Is that one Native American person's opinion, or is that just one individual person's opinion who's trying to dress it up to make it look authentic or something? You know, you really have no way of telling. Whereas it is possible to get pretty much completely unbiased scientific data on animals that you can use to infer their influences on you. So those of you out there who work with animal magic, I highly encourage you to sit down with Google and with a pad and pencil and answer the 5 identifying questions, because it will provide you with knowledge that that you probably wouldn't have been able to get from any other source. And this is our This is part of our path of modern totemism. As I said, if you'd like to hear more, the book is available from paintedcavesstudio.com, where I do talk about this in a lot more detail if you have some questions. But you're also welcome to put questions down in the comments if I went over anything a little too quickly and it wasn't clear. So I think that is a good enough place to leave it. I will be back at a later date with more videos. If anybody has any suggestions for what I should do some videos about, please let me know. And I think that'll do it. Remember to always be kind, and I'll see y'all later. Thank you.